Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of Hollywood comes a film from one of the most acclaimed directors of all time, a suspense thriller featuring over-the-top characters dealing with real-world issues among the backdrop of a superhuman narrative that continues to another film. We're talking about Split. Split was written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan and was released in the United States on January 20th, 2017. It was distributed by Universal Pictures. Split's main character, Kevin Crum, is also the main antagonist. Crum suffers from dissociative identity disorder stemming from childhood abuse, in which he is one of 24 distinct personalities. As the movie opens, the controlling personalities instigate the kidnapping of 3 teenage girls, hiding them for the purpose of a feeding at the hands of a personality called the Beast. The Beast is a mysterious character with superhuman strength who desires to rid the world of impure people, those who have not yet suffered pain as Kevin did during childhood. The primary struggle of the movie is between Casey, one of the girls who takes the lead in trying to escape, and Kevin, who is trying to stay in the light amongst the other personalities who are planning to bring the Beast to the forefront. But even as the plot unfolds, a surprise character from another film turns Split into a stealth sequel, leading to a shared universe that fans did not expect. Split was a box office smash upon its release, making nearly $279 million on a budget of $9 million. It received generally favorable reviews from critics, many of whom praised the cast as well as the suspenseful storytelling. Thanks to the overall story, the drama, and the main cast, Split is a favorite among movie fans and remains one of M. Night Shyamalan's most critically acclaimed films of all time. And that's the lowdown on Split. Horror movies, suspense movies, supernatural thrillers, ghosts and goblins, and all that kind of stuff. You don't hear a whole lot about that kind of stuff here on this little podcast. On the 6M, you know how we roll, kids. We keep this stuff pretty light. The most emotional we ever get on this show is, Tony Stark snapping his fingers, which I dare any fanboy to keep a dry eye during that scene when he's dying. I'm just saying. So that's probably the extent of which we get very deep or whatever on this show. But don't usually do horror. I'm not really a horror guy. It's not that I don't appreciate the art form. I'm just not a fan. I'm not one of those people that likes to be scared. Supernatural, depending on what it is, I can take some of it. Again, I'm not big on jump scares. I don't really care about that crap. Some people can't wait for it. It's not me. Thrillers, I'm down for a good thriller. No worries. I say all that because I'm trying to, in some way, define the film that we're going to talk about. I think you could call this a couple of, 2, 3 different things. Psychological thriller. That's not bad. That's actually pretty good. We might just run with that. It's a psychological thriller, kids. That means it's not just a thriller. You got to think about it, I suppose. So we'll just run with that. This is Split. M. Night Shyamalan. Got it right that time. Proud of myself. We didn't know it at the time, but this ended up being a sequel to Unbreakable. Now, Unbreakable we've done here on the show. Go back in the archives and check it out, and you'll get everything you ever needed to know in terms of what we think about that movie. But this time we're going into Split. So, Phil, this is one of those deals where, again, if you try to categorize it, thriller, supernatural, whatever you want to say, is it a comic book film? I don't know if we could call it a comic book film. I guess I do after the fact, but we can get into that. How long has it been since you've seen Split, and how high are you on this film? Does it still hold up for you?
I remember really liking Split when I saw it in the movies. I think it held up pretty well. I think once you know some of the twists, it's not as intriguing. But I remember watching this first time and being on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, it's got a lot of those moments, man. Definitely. Uh, and there's a good reason for that. The cast, my God, we'll get into the cast. I mean, one guy in particular carries this entire film. Um, do you now view this as a comic book film? Can you fit it into that category, or does that even make sense for you?
I mean, it fits now that we know that it's a part of a shared universe. I see it now as one of those kind of comics like it's not necessarily a superhero comic, but it's a comic. And the thing that I like about I guess the Shyamalan shared universe is that his movies have such a different tone to them. Even if you consider it a comic book movie, it's not like an MCU movie at all. It's what I'd imagine like a indie comic book movie would be like.
Hmm. Well done, like Birdman. Hey, did you, dude? I never saw Birdman. Did you ever catch that?
I did. I really liked Birdman.
Man, I got to
It's
check
not
that
really a
out.
comic book movie. It's kind of like a you have to see it to you have to see it. I don't want to give away, but it's a good movie.
Sure. Yeah, I might have
Uh,
to check that out.
Michael Keaton was robbed that year, robbed of his Oscar. I will
I
never forget him getting up to take his speech out of his pocket and realizing he lost and putting his speech back in his pocket and clapping for the guy that won anyway. All class all the way. But
wow.
when uh then when it won, I think best picture, you can see him just like fist bumping on the way down to accept it.
Nice. Who did he lose to that year?
That's a good question. Who did he lose to?
Gosh, I remember there being buzz around that film, but for some reason, it's on my list of movies that I'll watch one of these days, and like I just haven't caught it yet for whatever reason. It kind of put him back on the map in a way, didn't it? I don't know how much he was doing at the time.
I do feel like it's his biggest success in a long time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I can't for the life of me remember. I know that it won almost every other category it was in.
Hmm.
Um, but it didn't win Best Actor.
Interesting. Well,
Here, that is
Split has been
Googleable.
referred to not only as a psychological thriller, but supposedly the first ever stealth sequel. That's a nice way of putting it. And
Stealth sequel.
supposedly,
I've never heard that term before.
that's fun, right? Stealth sequel. And the first solo supervillain origin film. Is that right? I mean, it came before the Joker, so
I suppose, but like I said, I kind of feel like Unbreakable is Mr. Glass's origin film as well.
yeah,
I guess you could. I don't know. I feel like if you really did research into that, you might be able to poke holes in that.
that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just looking over numbers and holy God. So, kids, we're talking about a film that came out in 2016. Yes, it's been that long. Runs for 117 minutes. Any idea what this movie made? Because I got it in front of me. If you don't know, I'll tell you. The budget
I
was
don't
9
know.
million. The budget's 9 million. Pretty modest
Hmm.
for a film. It made $278.5 million. I
Whew.
think it did pretty well. So
Sounds like it did pretty well.
I think so. Um,
Oh, that's who he lost out to. He lost out to Eddie Redmayne that year.
oh, interesting.
Eddie Redmayne for The Theory of Everything.
Wow. I mean, I guess there's worse people to lose to.
That was a tough category that year. It was Steve Carell for Foxcatcher,
Hmm,
Bradley Cooper for American Sniper, Benedict Cumberbatch for The Imitation Game, and Michael Keaton for Birdman.
man. Yeah, tough category, tough year for sure. Um, let's talk about the cast. I said we were going to get to it. We're going to get to it. And dude, there is one guy, and you can make the argument for a couple different characters here. I get it, but if you don't nail the role, if you don't nail the primary antagonist, if you don't nail the primary character, this movie doesn't work. This movie's laughable. Okay, James McAvoy, young Professor X in our neck of the woods, as Kevin Wendell Crum slash Dennis slash Patricia slash Hedwig, Barry, Orwell, Jade, and the Beast. He has 24 personalities. And what used to be called split personalities, hence the name of the movie, folks, is now dissociative identity disorder, a DID. It's an actual living, breathing diagnosis, not for the sake of the film.
Yeah.
24 personalities. Dude, James McAvoy, does McAvoy get enough credit for how good he is, you think?
I think at that time people were really praising him for this role. Um, and boy, he does a phenomenal job here. It's not like he just goes in and changes his voice. I mean, doing several different American accents, and he's not American. Is quite a feat. But also changing his mannerisms with every character he plays, every body language he changes, like when he's doing the Hedwig stuff and how he has his shoulders slumped kind of like a kid would, and his body language is totally different when he switches back to the germaphobe. What's his name?
That's Dennis. Is that Dennis?
Dennis.
Or is that,
Dennis.
yeah,
Yes, Dennis. Because Dennis is the one with OCD.
right.
Uh, but yeah, that I mean, even the way his body language is completely different when he does Patricia. He did a fantastic job. And correct me if I'm wrong, but dissociative identity disorder is also what they had in Moon Knight as well, right? Because Mark Spector had the same thing.
I think you're right. I can't swear to it, but I think that's right. Sounds right. Yeah. Used to be called split personality disorder. Um, Shyamalan supposedly had the idea for this movie years before he wrote the screenplay and even had some dialogue written down. But he just had it sitting there and had no reason to do it or had no opportunity to do it. But then he just found the right moment and dove into it. Um, James McAvoy, I didn't know this, Phil. Don't know if you did. Replaced, speaking of Joker, Joaquin Phoenix in the title role.
Hmm. I didn't know that.
Yeah, dude. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. It's not really going out on a limb. I think this movie's still a hit. I think it's
Oh
a
yeah.
different. I think it's a different movie. But I think it's. Oh my God, Joaquin Phoenix in this role. Holy Lord! Can you imagine
Yeah.
that? Jeez,
It's a different movie with Joaquin Phoenix in it.
for sure. So yeah, I called him Young Professor X. He isn't. I appreciated his work anyway. Don't get me wrong, but playing Professor X has endeared him to me as a comic book fan, and I hope at some point we can see him in the MCU. Um, I mean, he's kind of been there already, I guess, if you want to call it that, in the Fox version of it. But I don't know, dude. To see him, and honestly, man, if you think about it, with the advent of the multiverse, Professor X does not have to be old, bald, in a wheelchair. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um.
he could be McAvoy's age and still be that role.
Yeah. It's just Mcavoy is just a great actor. I mean, stuff like Wanted, he was in the
Yeah,
Last King of Scotland. He's a great actor.
really is. Um, yeah, as I said, this movie does not work without him because, dude, there's many moments in this film, especially when he's Hedwig. I, dude, you get the wrong guy in this role, Phil, and that's you're gonna have people looking at each other in the audience and giggling.
Yeah.
But as it was played, it was creepy because it's the old saying. It goes back to the old pro wrestling trope. If the guy running the gimmick believes in the gimmick, you will too, because you'll forget that it's not real and you'll be as invested in it as the guy playing it. And that's what we got with him, man. 100%. So, um, let's talk about the trio that are abducted in the beginning of this film. Anya Taylor Joy as Casey Cook. She is I mean, for a lot of different reasons, she's the most interesting of the three. The other two are Betty Buckley as Karen Fletcher. I'm sorry, that's the psychologist. My apologies. We'll get to her as well. Um, let's see, Haley Lou Richardson as Claire Benoit, and Jessica Sula as Marcia. Those are the three that are kidnapped. Um, Anya Taylor Joy is the one that has the most substantial role here. She's, I mean, best supporting actress, or you know what I mean, supporting actress of the film for sure. Um, her story is horrible.
Yeah.
Like, man, the more you find out about this girl's story, and you know, spoiler alert, kids, we're gonna really spoil this film, obviously. But the ending, I didn't see that coming with her in the back of that cop car. Like, dude, everything this girl went through. I mean, I don't know if I knew about this actress's work before this film, but man, she did a great job. I mean, all three actresses really did. They played their roles very well, but I thought Taylor Joy was fantastic.
Yeah, she does a great job of all the subtle stuff that she needed to do. Um, like when she's trying to sneak out of the car when Dennis first abducts them, and she's trying to slowly get out, and she does that turn to the camera, and that one tear rolls down. Um, it's really good. I mean, she's the main protagonist of the movie, clearly. Uh, but yeah, I think everything she did, both in the basement scenes and later when she has to try and fend the beast off, she is great in this movie.
She really is. And honestly, Shyamalan could have went the other direction with this trio. And I thought he was in the beginning when they're both sort of yelling at her or fussing at her for not wanting to be on board and help fight this guy off. And it just looks like she doesn't care if she's alive or dead, because honestly, she doesn't, obviously. But I'm glad they didn't continue down that path. I mean, it became evident not only were all three terrified, but they all three were actually trying to help each other. I mean, you know, that could have been read as a, you know, three high school girls who never would have hung out together in any other instance, but now they're
Yeah.
forced together in this. But I'm glad they didn't go that route. They just portrayed them as being human.
They did a very similar dynamic. I noticed it this time because, of course, we just did Unbreakable, and we just watched Unbreakable. They did a very similar dynamic of introducing a character that you have reason to kind of not like at first, and then once you uh, learn more about them and they peel back the layers on them, it's like, oh yeah, this character is heroic for different reasons. And I think with both movies, Shyamalan has done this great thing where he's like, don't judge a book by its cover. Um, you could see somebody that looks, unassuming, or they might have like this kind of energy to them, but you just never know what people have gone through.
Yeah, that's a good call. Never judge a book by its cover, right? Because you don't know what someone's going through. Um, we'll call it for what it is. This is a case of her being sexually abused for years. We see flashbacks of her hunting in the woods with her father, which is creepy enough as it is to me. And
Yeah,
then you
not a big
see the
fan of
uncle.
hunting. I have
Ah,
family
dude.
members that love hunting, and like I have several family members that are from the South, and they do all of the stuff that comes with it. The big cases of guns, and it's just never been my thing. Maybe I'm just a city slicker. I don't know.
Well, you know where I'm at in the world, but I'm a city boy at heart. I'm not. No, it's not for me either. And like you, I've grown up with around people who hunt and whatnot. And I'm not going to sit here and vilify hunters. You know, it's
No, it's
if
it's
it's
a it's a
allowed, it's
hobby.
sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a hobby, and I understand that a lot of people grow up with that in their family, and so it's just something they do for enjoyment. Just not my cup of tea.
Same here. I can't get myself into it. Um,
Yeah, I'm not big on killing things. Just in general, like I try very hard to not kill bugs, and I don't know if that makes me weird, but um, like if I just did it earlier today, like if there's a fly in here, I'll try and catch it in a glass and let it out the house before I kill it. Um,
wow.
every now and then I'm just forced to just smack it. Like I've killed a few, but I try very hard to not kill bugs. I'm not a big like I said, I'm just not big on killing things. Like it's just not. I don't know, not my thing.
That's fair. I've in a former life I had to deal quite a bit with live seafood. And just the idea of putting a lobster in a boiling pot of water and it's alive. It's not going to be in a few minutes because, you want dinner. It's just, I don't know. Something about that's just weird to me. But like you said, to your point, man, I think it depends on where you are in the world, how you're raised, if you're raised around it. I mean, it's not for me either. But yeah, dude, seeing that bit, those flashbacks were creepy enough, and the way M Night shoots things, it's like these big, vast outdoor shots, and the way it's so quiet. There's hardly ever like any suspenseful music in the background unless it's like an action scene. So it's even quieter. And the leaves, you can hear them crunching, and it's just I don't know. You can hear a stream, and it's like very unsettling, that scene. And like when that little girl gets around the corner, and the uncle is, you know, down on his hands and knees trying to get her to play with him, dude. I remember being, oh my god, it's creepy. But I remember being in the theater with my wife who audibly cursed that son of a. I mean, dude, she's all into it.
Yeah, man, Shyamalan is a filmmaker, man. You can knock some of his movies and some of his creative choices, but he's a filmmaker through and through. Like his choices when it comes to um, how long to linger on a certain shot, what sound effects to use, just the editing choices he makes. He's a true artist when it comes to making film.
He is. He has his own style for sure. Those things that he does that I don't know if I've seen this done in other films before his work, but where there'll be two people in a conversation, but instead of cutting the camera back and forth, the camera will stay with one person, and you can hear the other person talking off camera, but the camera will stay with the one for a reason. And like it happened a couple of times in this movie when he comes in dressed as a woman, with the dress on, and the camera stays on her, and you can hear him talking, but then the camera pans and there he is. You're like, oh my god, it's a female personality. Yeah, you're right. He's an artist, man, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean he did that a few times in Unbreakable where just his choices of how to pan and give people like these linear shots that are very similar to reading comic books and going panel for panel. Um they're just smart choices and they're all things that, aesthetically I hadn't realized were so similar to Unbreakable until I watched them back to back.
Mm.
I mean, even just the soundtrack choices, I never noticed at the end of the movie that he used the same soundtrack from Unbreakable. It's the same music, all the way till we get to the reveal at the end of the movie.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't realize that either. And I even praised the soundtrack on the Unbreakable episode because it's so good. Yeah. Um, you're right. He's one of those one of a kind filmmakers. I don't know if you can compare anybody's work to him. For all I know, there's an Italian filmmaker out there that's his style's identical to M Night. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I think the thing with Shyamalan is Shyamalan became a joke for some people because it seems like he always has to do a twist, and people have made that into a joke. And he's had some pretty big misses in his career. I mean that last Airbender movie is not good. Uh, and he's had other movies that are just not good. But when he's on and when he's clicking, he makes good movies.
what'd you think of The Village? I know a lot of people are split on that too.
I think it's I think it's good, but it definitely has some of his stick that people don't like. I understand why people wouldn't like it. I don't think it's a bad movie. I mean, it's entertaining for what it was, but it definitely has all of his hallmarks on it. Um, and it's hard to not point them out. It almost feels like some of his later movies feel like a parody of what his other movies were because you could just see it coming a mile away. Like even the trailers are just like, yeah, this is definitely a Shyamalan trailer.
I'll tell you the truth. I like you, I can see why people would hate on it, but I thought the reveal of it's not taking place when you think it is, it's taking place now was brilliant. I did not see that coming at all. I had no trailer give it away. No one gave it away to me at all. And the fact that the blind girl went on the the trek to get medication, the secret was protected because she didn't know any better because she couldn't see anything.
Right.
I mean, that is a stroke of genius in my opinion. But no, a lot of the tropes are there. I get it, but like I didn't hate the film. Wasn't in love with it, but I didn't hate it either. So
Yeah.
now we'll get to Miss Buckley, who I mistakenly referred to her as a young, vibrant woman. This was Betty Lynn Buckley, is actually Karen Fletcher, the psychologist, who actually has won a Tony Award, nominated for 2 Daytime Emmys, 2 Grammys, and an Olivier Award, Olivier. And she's actually inducted into the American Theater Hall of Fame. So she's got quite the career here. This is one of those roles where if you put me on the spot and say cast someone else in this role, I don't really have anybody for you because she just feels real. She feels like a shrink who is actually trying to help this guy. She feels educated. She feels very smart, but she's sensitive at the same time. She's also professional. She knows where to put the line in between. This feels like a real person to me, Phil. I don't see an actress in this role. I thought she was great. And I hate that she met the end the way she met it. I mean, what do you think about her in this role, and why is it important to not only for, Kevin's role to be nailed, but also the psychologist? This has to be nailed too, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I thought she did a great job. I think in order for the audience to empathize with Kevin, we've got to see Kevin through her eyes. Because otherwise, we just see her through the victim's eyes the entire movie. And so I think her view of him adds that much more of much more layers to his character. It adds, you know, it humanizes him in some ways.
It does. And man, he really gets humanized in the end. When she calls him by his foot, God bless. Gave me chills when I saw that again. Because, man, he was so convincing in all the personalities. But when she called him by his full name and he suddenly stopped and said, "What'd I do?" And dude, he was in that moment. That may have been the best bit of the entire movie for me because he was so convincing as just someone who was like, "Oh God, what happened this time?" And he was convinced he was what they had. It was what year did he think it was? 2007 or whatever. He's like, I was just on a subway or something like that. Like his time frame was all screwed up because they had held down the original personality for so long.
Yeah.
Man, crazy good. How was he not nominated for anything off this film?
Who, McAvoy?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I'd be surprised if he wasn't.
He was not. Academy Awards, he was not, which is absolutely ridiculous. Teen Choice Award,
Teen
which he
Choice,
didn't even win, Phil. Good
Teen
God.
Choice Award.
Yeah. Yeah. San Diego Film Critics Society, he won that. Best actor. I mean, that's a snub, in my opinion. I just don't know how he doesn't get at least a nod. But yeah, folks, that's your cast, basically. There's some other roles here, but nothing's is as important. I mean, this is really you could argue, Phil, this is really just a 3-person film, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I know that Shyamalan has a cameo himself in this movie as a
Yeah,
supporting character, but it's very brief.
very true. Um, okay. So let's get into the meat of this because I want to get your views on this. And aside from the beast stuff, which we'll get into, I mean, and like this is the plot, and I always hit you with this. It's just par for the course for how we do things here on 6M. But like in terms of the plot, I I get I don't want to say lost, but there's moments of this where I can't quite understand his motivation. Supposedly the beast is going to make everything make sense, and the beast is coming to feed on these girls, and it's because of he's I don't know he's harmonizing everything, or he's the next step in evolution. I mean, it gets a little too comic book science in parts for this, but what do you think overall in terms of the plot for his motivations in this movie?
I think his motivations um, make sense. I think for Kevin's character to basically have this traumatic incident and create all these personalities to protect himself, the Beast is the ultimate like amalgamation of that, of this personality that wants to protect him but doesn't see that he's also doing harm in the same way that harm was done to him.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, there's so many bits that I didn't notice until I watched it this time. But again, it's just stuff that is connected to Unbreakable. Once you see the connections to Unbreakable, it's kind of hard to unsee them. Like when Dr. Fletcher was talking about it with her neighbor, and the neighbor was saying how I don't see how you talk to these people. I don't see how you try to help these people. And she said, she made very sure to not say, mentally ill or people that suffer from dissociative identity disorder. She said shattered people
Nice. Yeah,
need
very
our
good.
help as well. And so other stuff like when Patricia had the one girl that was trying to escape and she had the knife to her stomach and she was just telling her like, you know, your life is perfect basically. You never had to deal with anything like this. You've never had to suffer basically. And so basically the beast is gonna balance things out. He's gonna make things fair, quote unquote. I feel like that's basically what he's attempting to do because this was done to him and it's done to others. And so he's going to add balance to the world. And that's why, you know, he wouldn't hurt our main protagonist at the end because she has gone through trauma.
Yeah, he saw and I didn't see that coming at all, where she had wounded herself on her stomach. I did not see that coming. And they did an excellent job of hiding that. That's something else that M. Night is very good at. Not just big reveals, but those little subtle details that you don't know. Like it's kind of been there in front of you the whole time and you never saw it.
Um,
Like, so good.
yeah, it's just such a smart choice to have this teenage girl that's been sexually abused to cover herself up as much as possible because she doesn't want people to objectify her, one. And then on top of that, she's also covering all of the scars as well. And I mean, it's such a great scene when Hepwick noticed it and he's like, yeah, Dennis says you wear a lot of clothes because Dennis kept having the girls take off parts of their clothing when they got them dirty. And by the end of the movie, she was still fully clothed because she still wore so many clothes in general.
Did those bits get a little weird for you at all? Like the one girl stripped down to her underwear and a top.
Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you.
There's moments like that I think if you play it wrong, it starts to feel like a teenage slasher film, and now these girls are just eye candy. Did it go too far for you, or was it just the right amount?
No, I felt like it was supposed to be uncomfortable.
Good call.
And so, it worked in the sense that it was. It was definitely unnerving when Dennis would come in there. I mean, I was definitely unnerved immediately when he tried to pull the one girl away, and she had to pee on herself to make him leave her alone. It's supposed to be unnerving.
And it makes you, all right, so this is dumb question time, I suppose, but like, I mean, we kind of know what his intention is because he makes it clear later that she told him, uh, she meaning Patricia, that he's not to touch them again. So we assume he was going to assault her. I mean, I assume because his hands went into a certain location, obviously. But like,
Maybe because I mean, Dr. Fletcher says later that he likes to have young women dance for him
there you go.
nude, I guess. But I think I don't think that I think that there was maybe a line there that he even wouldn't have crossed. I'm not sure. But then again, this movie, it's a PG-13 movie. It there's a lot of things that are suggested that are not confirmed.
I mean, it's borderline R to me. I think
Yeah.
if a couple scenes had went another way, this would have got an R rating. It kind of feels like. But yeah, I get a little lost on the. I don't know. I mean, it's obvious they don't want Kevin to have anything more to do with this. They want Kevin gone, and they make sure he's gone by the end of the film. But this idea that the beast is just going to make everything better, and this transformation they talk about, there is somewhat of a transformation that goes on, but when it shows him with his shirt off and you see his body and whatnot, how much of this is not physically happening to him, but it's just he is of the, in other words, his personality is this monster. I mean, he didn't exactly gain 30 pounds of muscle for those scenes, unless I'm just reading it wrong. I mean, is it more or less like this personality is inhabiting his body, perhaps?
I mean, well, they talked about that leading up to a transformation that uh if the just how powerful the brain is, if you believe and this is your perception of yourself, then uh this is what you'll be. I mean, I think it's Jade is the personality that has diabetes, and none of the other personalities do.
Right.
And she was the only one that was injecting herself with insulin. Uh so yeah, I think that they were just making the point that uh the brain is powerful. Like if you think that this is what you are and what you look like, then that's what you'll be.
And I got to say, as far as comic book science is concerned, it's not a bad little bit of comic book science. I mean, you could actually make the case that if you took this narrative far enough, this could create a whole, not mutants and not metas, as DC calls them, but a whole other type of evolved sort of superhuman. And maybe it's been written in a publication already. I don't know, but it's not a bad idea if you think about it. Like to their point, like each personality, like, and that's true in the real world. Not so much the bit about a girl. What is the one case study that this girl was blind? I think she was blind, but like the other personalities weren't. So she somehow her optic nerves healed themselves. So I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a bit much. But there is stuff in real life with this thing that's like one person has a food allergy, but she doesn't. The other personality doesn't, so she doesn't, or something weird. And it's like, how's that possible? But man, to your point, the mind can convince itself of anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I only get hung up on it, dude, because the end goal, I'm not sure what the end goal is. I mean, it makes sense to me, but I get lost in that ultimate point of what is the end goal. But he gets out of this. virtually unscathed. I mean, he takes 2 shotgun rounds point blank, and I guess he just healed, or it just didn't affect him all that much because we see him later and you don't see the wound per se. But not for nothing, this guy killed two girls, 2 innocent girls who didn't do anything wrong to anybody. So we don't really see him meet justice in this film at all. And I guess that happens off camera leading into, well, you'll find out with Glass, right? But it kind of happens off camera. So yeah. Should there have been a comeuppance for him in this movie? I mean, should he have been killed in the end or at least been captured?
I don't know if it hurts the movie if he's not captured. Um, yeah, I don't know if it hurts the movie because I mean, this was already made with the intent of there being a sequel, so doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of used to films like that. Unless it is a slasher film, we usually see the guy kind of end up, you know, falling on the wrought iron fence. That's always a good way to go for movies like that, like that happened to Doctor Strange, right? Fall on the wrought iron fence and it goes right through you.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, I was kind of surprised to see that he didn't get his in the end. What about the plot of this in terms of he kidnaps these 3 girls in broad daylight in a public parking lot and then just takes off with them? Now, to be fair, we don't see the other side of this. We get little clips here and there of like news broadcasts that are happening on on Karen's TV or whatnot, but very quick flashes. I mean, it seems like the entire city would be out looking for these 3 girls, but they never really make it clear where they are, do they? I don't think they did with Unbreakable either, unless I'm mistaken.
Uh, no, I don't. I don't think they ever let us know what city they're in. Um, I mean, but yeah, it's all over the news and everything. Yeah, none of it. I didn't really. That didn't really bother me that much because I thought the idea that somebody that looked like Dennis, who seemed pretty unassuming, um, could just sneak up and do that. It didn't seem like that was that far fetched.
Yeah, that's fair. And I will clarify here, this movie took place in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
storyline wise anyway. Just outside Philadelphia. And that the zoo that they're in is the Philadelphia Zoo. I literally had no idea where they were in this country. Could have been in Canada for all I knew. Interesting. I guess in the end, it doesn't really matter where they are because what really matters is the story with the characters that's going on. Um, so, all right. Does it help or hurt this film if you go into it knowing that it's a sequel to Unbreakable?
Um, I don't think it hurts it. I do think it enhances the movie once we get the twist and we find out. I don't think it's necessary that we know that it's a sequel going in. But it definitely makes the movie better on rewatches.
Hmm. Oh, for sure. No doubt. And what we're talking about, kids, as if you didn't know, David Dunn, the character from Unbreakable, is in the end of this film. And they're in this diner and they're talking about the guy who blew up the train and responsible for all these other devastations. And what was his name? It was Glass. So we got the big reveal. And dude, when that happened, I like audibly made a sound. It's like a gasp or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a sequel. And had no idea it was. Crazy good stuff. I mean, you couldn't really get away with that now. I don't know. Maybe I guess if you, I don't know, it'd be hard. And even this movie's not that old, right? But like, it feels like now, could you even get away with this, knowing how things are now?
I think you could. I think this was a this was 16 years after Unbreakable, so of course it wasn't fresh in anybody's mind. and we don't have stuff like the same studios and stuff were attached, so it wasn't dead giveaways.
That's a good call. Yeah, but M. Night wrote this, directed it, produced it. He's jack of all trades, kids. Where do you rank this? And I'll ask you this when we do the Glass episode also, all right? But where do you rank this with Unbreakable? Does one outperform the other? Or can you even look at both these movies in those terms, since they're similar, but they're not the same movie?
I don't know. I think the Unbreakable overall is a better movie. I think the story is better. But there are some things in this movie that are better. Just the performance from Mcavoy is probably better than anything in Unbreakable. I think that this works. I think this works as a nice continuation and some nice world building. But I think Unbreakable works better as a standalone film, if that makes sense. And that's not to say that
Yeah.
this isn't a good standalone film, but I just think that Unbreakable works better.
And knowing that there's some comic book stuff behind this, I guess that necessitates a third film, because that he was going to do it anyway, right? But like without that twist, if this had just been a guy with DID, and forget all of the he can climb on walls, which is unsettling all by itself. If you take that stuff out, this is just any other. This is like Saw, right? That's what this is. Like it's just some deranged guy who, and then if he escapes in the end, part 2 is not a movie about him. It's about an FBI agent who's tracking him down, kind of like Silence of the Lambs or something. I mean, but with it being a comic book world, a comic book shared universe, as we said, the third movie is that. Where does this stand for you in terms of M. Night films? Is it one of your favorites, or what is your favorite M. Night film?
I feel like my favorite is either Unbreakable or Sixth Sense. Probably Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
But I think this ranks pretty high because, again, Shyamalan has had some very highly publicized misses, in my opinion. I feel like at least the Unbreakable trilogy, he did really well with those two movies. Yeah, he just had so many other missteps. It's hard to think of any of his other really good movies. Like, and I kind of feel bad because I think we've given this guy a lot of praise throughout this episode. when I think of other movies made, it's just like yeah, that wasn't good.
Here's a bit that I didn't know, and anytime we research things for the 6M, sometimes I'll run across details I knew, and a lot of times I run across details I had no idea. Apparently, the reaction from the mental health community was not good. Poorly received by mental illness and dissociative identity disorder campaigns. I'll get it out. Mental health advocates warned that the film stigmatizes dissociative identity disorder and may directly affect those living with it. Quote, you are going to upset and potentially exacerbate symptoms in thousands of people who are already suffering, end quote. That was psychiatrist Dr. Garrett Marie Deckel, a DID specialist. She said that, in contrast to McAvoy's character, people with DID, who may represent over 1% of Americans, that's a big number, dude, are rarely violent, and research has shown that they are far more likely to hurt themselves than to hurt others. I mean, it's a movie, Phil. I mean, would it have made everybody feel better if we called this something else? I get where they're coming from. And in this day and age, you don't want to, go after anybody or say anything that's going to portray anybody in a bad light. I get it. But you can't technically say this. I don't know. Again, apart from the creepy I'm crawling on walls stuff, it's not like this is this couldn't happen. Anything could happen. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? Is it too far down the rabbit hole of actual DID or no?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I feel like it's a movie. Of course, I can't speak for people that actually suffer from DID, And I can't sit here and say that, they shouldn't be triggered by this or they shouldn't be bothered by it. I don't have any way of knowing what their lives are like. So I can't say something like that. But I do feel like it's fiction. It's not real. And so I don't think that this movie is attempting to make people that suffer with DID into, a villain or to demonize them. I just think that the antagonist of this movie just happens to have DID.
Yeah, it's a good call. And you use the word demonize. It makes sense because there's a psychologist and psychoanalyst in New York who was asked whether or not they were going to see the film. He said no, had no plans to. And what concerned him is that the film may inadvertently demonize people who are truly suffering. I have two answers to that. One, why haven't you seen the movie? What is the problem here? You're going to criticize without watching. I love when that happens. But number two, also, Kevin is suffering. I think we make that clear in the course of the movie. He is suffering. Like, the other personalities may be in cahoots with each other, but you get remorse from Kevin. You get it from Barry. We haven't even talked about the Barry personality, which I actually love that guy. And you get it from a couple different instances here, but like, dude, I don't at all come away from this thinking he's a criminal mastermind. He's suffering. He's struggling with this. I mean, that's how I came away from it.
Yeah. I didn't get the feeling that this was attempting to make people with DID into this, into monsters or something, or because again, I feel like there are several times in this movie where Dr. Fletcher gets us to empathize with him and understand his struggles.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I will say this about this movie. This is not one of those movies I'm going to watch a whole bunch. Like, I bought it after it came out, like on DVD, on Blu-ray, and I think this might make the third time I've watched it, to be honest. Yeah, maybe the third time, maybe fourth. Like Unbreakable, on the other hand, I've seen countless times, and I love that film. But this is a hard one for me to just like Glass. I've legit only seen Glass one time. So anxious to hear what your thoughts are on that, because it's one of those movies, man, that like either you're gonna really see what they did and it's gonna make sense. You're gonna be like, he did that. Why would he do that? I mean, yeah. What I like about M. Night's work is that there never seems to be like an easy answer. It's not predominantly, well, the good guys won in the end. Or hooray, hooray, let's all skip and jump and be happy. That's not really what he does. Like every time you think that the hero may be, on his or her way to getting somewhere, there's an obstacle thrown in their path. It just feels, for lack of a better term, real, gritty, and like life is happening to this person. It just doesn't feel to me like it just never feels like it's too much, if that makes sense. Like he doesn't make this, and I don't mean this to be a criticism, but his stuff's not easy to watch because of that. Like and I think the best word you've used to describe this in some of these scenes is uncomfortable, because it's supposed to be. I think that's an art form in and of itself,
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel like the intent is to be unnerving, and um I think that he gets that across a lot. This is supposed to be, a thriller, it's supposed to be suspense. Um so I think that it serves its purpose. I don't really understand people that go into these things and go, "Oh, well, this movie where uh the villain did something bad means that, people that also, you know, may have this person's characteristics might also be bad in real life." No, he might just be a character in a movie.
Thank you. Yeah. Hannibal Lecter was a creepy white British dude. Doesn't mean that creepy white British dudes eat people, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, I don't get that. Well, yeah, that's I don't. For me, Unbreakable is my favorite M. Night film. I did enjoy The Village. Lady in the Lake, not a big fan. Wasn't that what that one was called? Lady in the Lake, I think.
Lady in the Water, I think
Lady in
is
the
what it's called.
Water. Girl in the Water,
Yeah,
whatever.
I didn't like Lady in the Water. Yes, that's one of his misses. I didn't like that, or The Happening was also not very good.
Oh
Uh,
man,
uh,
that may
uh,
have been some of Mark Wahlberg's worst performance I've ever seen. I'm just
uh,
saying.
what's the Will Smith one that he did with his son? After Earth. That's also not very good.
Oh man. I mean, it makes you think sometimes, has the
Uh,
well run dry? I don't know.
yeah, he's definitely had some movies that didn't quite hit.
Yeah. Sixth Sense is a classic for sure, though.
uh, yeah, I mean, Sixth Sense is a classic. I think
Oh,
Signs is
Signs
still
is
pretty good.
crazy creepy. It
Uh,
really is. I think Signs is creepier in this film for the alien aspect. I
yeah,
really do.
yeah.
Well, kids, there you have it. The second film in the David Dunniverse. I don't know. But yeah, we didn't know it at the time, found out at the end. I don't know if I asked you this going in. Did you know the reveal before you saw David Dunn at the lunch counter? Did you have any idea?
No, nobody spoiled it for me, so I saw it in the theater.
Did you dig it when you saw it? Was that put a smile on your face?
Yeah, I thought it was a very cool twist. I thought it was cool to get more of those characters. Um, definitely did not expect that. Like I said, 16 years later. Um, but yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch. We'll see what you think when we cover Glass. That'll be interesting. Well, there you have it, folks. That is Split. And we're going to, as we said before, Unbreakable's in the archives. Please feel free to go check it out. And Glass will be coming your way at some point down the line. As we always say, keep your eyes open. Brand new episodes drop every Tuesday. So be sure to subscribe on all the major platforms today. And before we get out of here, Phil, let's get your last word on Split.
Split is definitely worth a watch as a suspense thriller, even if you're not interested in the connected universe stuff. You just want to see a nice, like, kind of horror / suspense thriller. This is a good movie to watch, if nothing else, for McAvoy's tremendous performance.
Give this man an Oscar. He earned it. Give him one after the fact. He still earned it. Should have won it. Yeah, for all the reasons Phil said. More, if you're a supernatural movie kind of guy, you'll dig this. If you're a psychological thriller guy, you'll like this. If you're a comic book guy, you're probably going to like this. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything to keep you happy. So, yep, this is on the recommended viewing list of the 6M. So please go check it out. And as we said, keep your eyes open. We'll ask this. You know what? I'll save that question for Glass. I'll hit you with that next time, and we'll see what everybody else thinks as well. I like to leave them in suspense, folks, and we'll get there. But in the meantime, that is Split.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.